Yo, what's up, everyone, and welcome to episode 49 of Buzzer Beaters. This is a NBA dedicated podcast, or I should say a basketball dedicated podcast that's brought to you by grumblingsmedia.com. I'm Eddie Aparicio. This is my co-host, Anthony Twan Corral, and welcome to episode 49. We're only one episode away.
Niners.
One episode. Yeah, exactly. Niners. But we're only one episode away from episode 50. And speaking of the Niners, our guest next week is going to be JJ Stokes, formerly of the 49ers. So it's kind of appropriate he brought that up, right? I actually spoke to him, before our podcast tonight. We're actually, by the way, we're recording tonight. Our apologies, but we tend to be here live every Wednesday from 9 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. But sometimes life gets in the way. And yesterday, my wife, she had her birthday on the 21st. So, I can't, that trumps things, right? I have to go ahead and
what was she thinking, Eddie? Why did she have her birthday today?
I know. She got in the way. But our intent is to be here live every Wednesday so that we can bring you basketball content. We're dedicated to the NBA primarily, but we do dibble and dabble in NCAA men's as well as WNBA when it's appropriate. But we're brought to you by grumblingsmedia.com. You can find us at grumblingsmedia.com. You can also find us on any popular podcast outlet you can think of, such as Pandora, YouTube, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, X. You just name it. Whatever suits you, go ahead and pick that. But our intent is to go about an hour to an hour and a half each week. We're going to go ahead and cover two topics this week. This week, we're going to go ahead and cover all of the series that led up to the conference finals that are going on right now, right? So we're going to talk about what transpired to lead up to the conference finals, because last time we had this podcast, there were still other teams still alive, but now we got the four teams, the final four right now, which are the Timberwolves, Thunder that just played tonight, and the other series is the Knicks and the Pacers, which was a great ending.
Great game.
If you missed that game last night, it was unbelievable. Then what we're going to do is we're going to dovetail into a topic, continue talking about this topic that Twan and I had created, this PGI Index, which is a player greatness index. And last week we went ahead and did a Mount Rushmore segment where we were comparing our subjective ratings to what our PGI Index says should be the Mount Rushmore. This week, what we talked about last week is what we're gonna we kind of gave you a sneak peek, is that we're gonna go ahead and look at the NBA 75th anniversary team. There are 76 players that were voted in by the NBA as the most significant players in the 75-year history of the NBA. And the reason why there's 76 is because there was a tie at 75, right? So what we did is we're going to go ahead and look at the subjective rankings that ESPN provided for that. And then we're going to go ahead and the same 76 players, we plug that into our PGI Index. And we want to see how our PGI Index ranked those players. And then we're going to compare and contrast the discrepancies between the two. So that's going to be the second segment, right?
That's exciting.
And that should pretty much take up our whole time.
We could probably spend a whole hour just on that.
We could easily, bro. Easily, man. So anyway, man. So before we get into it, man, what's been going on with you, man? Anything new and exciting in the last week for you, bro?
No, nothing new and exciting. My youngest child. He's turning 21.
Yeah, this coming Saturday, bro.
This weekend, so we're having a little shindig.
We're gonna be there.
Eddie's gonna be there. We're gonna have a good time. So that's right now that's kind of taking over the house. Gotta make sure that we got everything lined up and got the food and the decorations and so you'll be excited. Man? You'll be excited, Eddie, because we're gonna have a pupusa cart.
What?
Yes.
Are you serious?
We're gonna have a pupusa lady. Yep.
What?
Yeah.
Make them fresh right there.
Right. Yep. Making them fresh right there. Jalapenos, zucchini, chicken, meat. So that's a little sneak preview for
you. Got to tell me. You got to give me the contact information of that person, man. That's money right there. That's sweet.
So that in and of itself is a little bit of a story. We originally wanted to start with a taco truck just to make it easy, and then that kind of went sideways, and then we had another option, and that went sideways, and then my cousin, she let me know, hey, I went to a graduation and a friend of mine had a pupusa lady and they were so good. Let me get you her number. So I called her up, see if she was available. She was. We're good to go. So I'm excited.
Right on, man. Right, dude. Well,
yeah.
Nothing on my end has happened that that fun this week. But this week, unfortunately, our company's kind of going through some some shifts and some changes, or
yeah,
org changes in our company, and it kind of trickled down to the sales team. And dude, I thought I was going to get affected, but luckily I kind of wasn't affected. But there's 3 people that were affected on my team, so that was a scary moment for me, right?
Yeah, that's sad and scary. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is that I have this hefty bill with Loyola Marymount, right, for the college tuition
Yeah.
that my daughter chose, to go to this school that's not a cheap school. Even though she got a scholarship, it's still hell of expensive, bro. So anyway, but I'm thankful that I'm good, but the
knock on wood. Knock on wood.
Yeah, the pressure's been ratcheted because we have to show kind of like some results quickly in the next couple quarters, or who knows, man. We'll see. But I got to put my head down and do what I got to do to kind of make sure the bills are paid around the house here, man. So, but anyway, so let's get into hoops, man. Enough of that stuff, right? Oh, by the way, real quick, I wanted to go ahead and point out for the audience is that you notice that we don't have, at least I don't have a virtual background anymore.
Yep.
And the reason being is because we had to change the platforms, and this is our first show on the new platform. And the guidance that our producers gave us is that the virtual background seems to tax the software of this platform for whatever reason, and it could slow things down. So you're seeing kind of the raw, what you're seeing how things are all natural here in the house of my house. As before I kind of hid all this, with the virtual background, but you're seeing everything all natural right now. So you can see I'm proudly showing the Warriors back here, even though they're out, they're still my team. We're diehard Warrior fans. You can see here, man. So, but anyway, let's get into it, Twan.
So before you do that, Eddie, you and I watch a lot of podcasts, and we watch, and these people got their fancy backgrounds and their special lighting and their logos, and that's not us, bro. That's not us.
No, man, we're real, bro. we're keeping it real, man.
We're just a couple of guys talking hoops.
Yeah.
That's in case everyone out there, in case you haven't picked up on that, that's our vibe, bro. We're just here to have a conversation.
Total conversation, not rehearsed.
Maybe
it's organic. It's organic as it can get, man.
Exactly. I compare it to maybe you're at a bar and you hear a couple of guys in the corner arguing about, who's the best football player or who's the best basketball player. They're kind of going at it. This is kind of the setup that we I don't want to say we plan to do. This is just kind of naturally what
we decided to do it this way, because we're avid sports talk radio listeners. And, we typically tune in, not because of the content, it's because of the dynamic of the hosts, right? And it's fun to watch that dynamic. That's what really draws me to watch it. And we're hoping that that's what you enjoy about our show too, but I got to say, last week's show, when we talked about the Mount Rushmore, that's been our highest viewed show thus far. Okay. So we're thankful for you guys tuning in. And if you definitely like our show, please give us a thumbs up. We like to see our channel grow. It just brings more people to this concept of the kind of the talk show kind of process on a podcast, kind of organic. But that's kind of the way we're going to go ahead and roll from here on out, man. And like I said, we're going to bring JJ Stokes next week, and the whole hour, an hour and a half, depending on how it goes, is going to be a total bar talk with JJ Stokes, right? We're going to get to know him as a person.
I'm looking forward to it.
We're going to talk to him about like his life as a football player, his life as a dad, who his favorite teams are. We're going to talk about all that stuff, right? So just tune in next week for our 50th episode. It's a major milestone for us. We've been doing this for almost a year, and JJ Stokes, as busy as that guy was, and I was so happy and I was so gracious that he accepted to go ahead and be on the show, because, man, he explained his schedule to me today about his last freaking week. I was like, oh my God, I'm exhausted just hearing about it, bro. Thanks for being on our freaking, show next week, man. So, but anyway, so we're going to have him here next week. Feel free to go ahead and ask him any questions. I pretty much asked him, is there any questions that you don't want us to, you want us to avoid? And he says, man, my whole life's been in public, so I don't care, man. Just, and I said, okay, so audience, ask away. All right, next week. All right. So
cool.
Come on, let's get into it, bro. Let's get into the, last time we had this podcast, the Celtics were still alive.
Yes.
But now they got ousted, right? Indiana Pacers essentially ousted them last week. So
no, the New York Knicks ousted.
The Pacers. Wait, are we talking about the New York Knicks first?
No. The Knicks are the ones that beat the
Celtics.
Sorry,
the Knicks got the Pacers ousted the Knicks. I said it the other way around. Yeah, the Pacers ousted the Knicks, right?
In game one.
Dude. No. Wait.
Rewind.
Take it back.
Pacers defeated Cleveland.
Yes,
York
that's what
defeated
I
the
said.
Celtics.
The Pacers already defeated the Cleveland Cavaliers, but then the Knicks
Correct.
had just won their series, right?
Correct.
Or do you have the slides, man? Because that's
I do have the slides, but before we get to the slides,
okay,
really quick, just want to talk about it. Okay, unless you're a New York Knicks fan, and for you Knicks fans out there, I'm not trying to rub salt into the wound. What a freaking game yesterday! Holy crud, what a game!
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
I'll tell you something right now. If that was the Warriors that lost, my heart would be destroyed right now.
Oh my God,
I wouldn't be able to take it. So again, I'm not trying to rub it, but from just someone who's not. I mean, I think we mentioned this in the past, and for no other reason than the Pacers remind Eddie and I of the Warriors, the Run TMC era Warriors, because there's so much offense and so little defense, that they inspired, that we both kind of adopted the Pacers as kind of our favorite team to win the whole thing. Just because of that, right? Not any other reason, not because we hate another team or anything like that. They just kind of, and so I'm watching it, and I'm watching Halliburton, and I'm watching him do the Reggie Miller choke, even though he did it too early.
Oh yeah, that was pretty funny.
His toe was on the foot. I kept thinking to myself, dude, he jinxed it. Now they're going to lose in overtime. He freaking jinxed it.
Oh,
and,
I know.
And no, they still came through. They still won. That was an exciting game, And
totally, man. But we'll dovetail into that once we get through the other series, man. But definitely, let's do it, man.
All right, let's do it.
What I got screwed up on was that I was talking about the Celtics, and I know the Pacers are playing the Knicks now, but the Celtics lost to the Pacers, and that's the series that we wanted to cover first because we have what's going to happen to the Celtics and what we think their offseason should look like. But anyway, if you look at here, if this is your first time, we went ahead and came up with this chart that kind of shows fantasy points. So it's a collective of all of the assists, or excuse me, all of the stats that players accumulate during a game. And then you can see that the total is the amount that they have accumulated in the entire playoff run of all of the games that they've played. So you're going to see that on, as the total. Then you see the minutes in games. I have game 5 and game 6 here. We can only do 2 games at a snapshot just to kind of see the flow of it. But I keep track of the minutes, fantasy points, and then fantasy points per minute. And then what you see here is what's highlighted in that light orange are the guys that have the best efficiency from a fantasy points per minute standpoint, right? So I just wanted to go ahead and outline what you see here. And the reason why you see on the bottom is that Twan's pick being the Celtics in 5, and it's in red, and Eddie's pick being the Celtics in 6 is because we were both wrong on that, right? So we lost.
You had the right number of games, Eddie.
Yeah, exactly. With the wrong team, man. So, but anyway, that's what I wanted to point out to you. But once Jason Tatum got hurt, bro, we just knew it was going to be hard for them to win. But they did come back and win, game 5, right? Which was surprising, right? They won by a pretty big large amount. Like it was like what 102 or is that 112? I can't see. But anyway,
127 to 102.
102. So 102. For you guys, you can probably just zoom in so you can see it, but I can't do that as we're doing it live. But anyway, so you can see that the Celtics, they got motivated when Jason Tatum, essentially was out, and it just motivated everybody else to step up. But we knew that was going to be kind of hard to sustain. Kind of the same thing that happened with the Warriors when Curry got he got hurt. Their best team, once the best players out, it's going to be hard. But the Celtics definitely had the talent to be able to make this a series if they could get past game 6, right? They could easily go to game 7, make it interesting. But what happened is Porzingis didn't really show up, right? And he's been fighting this illness. We still don't know what his illness is. I have my theories what it could be. It's not been disclosed. Nobody's going to disclose it. He has some kind of viral issue that's going on, and it's been kind of affecting his play for some time. But hats off to the Knicks, man. We got to give it to the Knicks that these guys. We have been telling everybody that this bench is so short, it's going to affect them long term. And so far, up to this point, it hadn't, right? We can, once we dovetail to the next series, we can probably talk about it more. But this is what I see, and you can see that all the overall points. Jalen Brunson's the highest point getter right now on the Knicks. He's at 530.6 overall fantasy points for his entire playoff run, and then you can see how that compares to the highest on the Celtics, being Jason Tatum at 442.9. But you can see that the efficient players, Karl Anthony Towns was the most efficient one on the Knicks for game 5, and then you can see OG Anunoby being the most efficient for game 6 as the starters. And then you look at the Jaylen Brown, he was the most efficient for the Boston Celtics at 1.48, and then 1.18 for Kristaps Porzingis, believe it or not, in game 2. So anyway, what are your observations, bro, from what you see? I just want to kind of point out for the audience who may not have seen this before.
Yeah, so My observation, number one, was for a minute, and I want to be careful how I phrase this. After Jason Tatum went out and the Celtics whooped on the Knicks in that game 5, because they did whoop on them, I thought in the back of my head, and I still, we'll never know, but I'm like, the Knicks better win game 6 because they're going to lose game 7.
For sure.
And the reason I felt that way is that I you and I have talked about it. When a player goes out, the other players pick up. And if you have the talent, which they do, they play a little differently. They have a little more energy. So the Celtics became the underdog, and now the Knicks were the favorites once Tatum went out. And I thought that dimension could have created enough change that maybe would have gave Boston the edge. But kudos to the Celtics. They laid it on them on game 6. I mean, pretty much the whole second half, it was party time in New York.
Yeah.
All those guys, Walt Frazier, dude, is that dude age? Holy crud. He still looks good,
man. Like, I mean, dude, and you can see all kinds of people in the crowd, man.
Oh, yeah. John Starks is out there. Bernard King is out there.
King. I mean, just all the guys, all the celebrities that were out there too. It was cool, man. I mean,
yeah,
it's
Ted
been a long
Lasso's
time.
Out there. Yeah,
it's been a long time for this fan base to have, them being at this position. So, you gotta be happy for that fan base. And anytime the New York Knicks are good in the NBA, it makes it for a better NBA because they're one of the more storied franchises. They're one of the oldest franchises, right? Yeah. So that's why it's good, right? Yeah. So anytime the Celtics, the Lakers, the Knicks, the Warriors, right? I mean, they're all the oldest franchises, right? So but anyway, so good observations, man. But anyway, the Knicks took out the Celtics in 6, and now I think we're gonna go ahead and dovetail into what we think. Whoa! I didn't do that.
I did that. That was me. I apologize. Technical difficulties. I was trying to go to the next slide, and I fat fingered it. All right. My apologies. All right. So here we have the Boston Celtics. Their kind of round 2 elimination card. As you guys can see here, their offensive rating was ranked 5th at 114.4. Defensive rating was 108.3. They had the 3rd best net rating at 6.2. Starter 81 points per game, ranked for 8th, and then 24 points per game for the bench at 10th. Kind of talking about their strengths. Obviously, they when healthy, they have elite wings. Both Jason Tatum and Brown are excellent wing players. They're an excellent defensive team. They create a lot of spacing.
Sorry, I did that by accident, man.
No worries.
Go ahead. Sorry, man.
Let me bring it back up. All right,
I got it.
Oh, you got it? All right, Here we go. And then, they create a lot of shooting and depth, shooting and spacing, and they have a lot of depth. Their weaknesses, injuries. So, last year Porzingis was hurt for a good portion of the playoffs. They managed to win the NBA Finals anyway. This year Tatum went out. So they do have that. And also I think they're very, very reliant on the 3-pointers.
For sure. That's their biggest weakness, man.
Yeah, and so when it's falling, they're unbelievable. Like I keep thinking, Eddie, of the first game of the season when they played the Knicks. Do you remember that?
Yeah, they were just lights out, man.
They must have made like 63 points. I don't know how
they were lights out.
They made. They were winning by like 40 points at half. I mean, it was just insane. So when it's going good, but I'm thinking, in the postseason, the 3-pointers is a different beast. It's harder to come by. The defense pick up. So, they have a lot of reliance on 3-pointers. As everyone knows, their starting 5, Derek White, Holiday, Brown, Tatum, Porzingis. Obviously, Tatum got hurt. And their rotation primarily was Pritchard, Al Horford, and Luke Cornett with some Sam Hauser sprinkled in. That was basically their bench. Overall assessment. So I struggled with this, honestly, between small tweaks needed and need a lot of work. I want to be clear. I don't think they need a lot of work, but there's going to be a lot of questions now. So Tatum's going to miss most of next year, right? This team had signed contracts for everybody from last year for 3 seasons. So they're this season, next season, and the season after. I think Porzingis is a guy that they're going to have. I think he's a free agent, if I'm not mistaken, or at least due for contract negotiations. So I don't know what they're going to do with him. I don't know what they potentially got a lot of work depending on how they approach this. Right? I've heard a lot of trade rumors, like maybe Derek White can get traded. Maybe, so I don't know what their approach is going to be for next season. They could keep everything as is without Tatum and see how that goes. Or because Tatum is hurt, they can try to blow some stuff up, get some picks, or do some things. So I left it at small tweaks needed because in reality, that's all they really need to do. Hold the fort till Tatum gets back. Unlikely, but depending on how he heals, it's possible he's back for the postseason next year. I do still anticipate with or without Tatum, the Celtics should make the postseason, especially in the Eastern Conference.
For sure.
So we'll see how that plays out. What are your thoughts?
You know what? I think that Porzingis not being himself, I think greatly affected this team because he is the X factor, in my opinion, on this team when he's healthy, because he's a matchup problem. And when he's healthy, he can post people up, just turn around and shoot right over them. He can shoot the three. He's a defensive guy, but I think just him not being right, once they lost Tatum, all the load was on Jaylen Brown with a sprinkle of Derek White, right? And for this team to flow, they have to have three guys that, are shooting at a pretty good clip. And once one of those shooters, Jason Tatum being probably their best shooter, and then Kristaps Porzingis being one of the better shooters, once two of those guys are out, their whole offensive game plan just goes to crap, right? So that I would say that a slight tweak is needed, but not much, man. I just think that the health, without Tatum next year, we're going to see if somebody else emerges on this team. I think they're going to probably bring in somebody else, or maybe someone that they drafted, maybe a Baylor Shireman, that guy who came out of Creighton. Maybe he emerges. I don't know. But, someone who's going to emerge on this team that has to step up, and we'll see. But I think your assessment is pretty spot on that, they're 2 3-point dependent. And when they don't fall, then you see this team kind of struggle sometimes. But usually this team can shoot, man. But, when it doesn't happen, then things like this could happen, especially when you lose, one of their star players or injury.
Which is kind of interesting to me, because Drew Holiday is an excellent low post player for a small guy.
For sure.
He's an excellent kind of in the 3-point arc type of player. And I didn't feel like they ran enough for him once Tatum went out. But in any case, I think you're right. I think overall small tweaks are needed. Al Horford, I believe, is up for a contract. We know, but will he retire? Will he resign? Who knows? So there's a couple of things that is going to happen, but they do need a little more strength inside the 3-point arc. Someone who can drive, someone who can create their own shot, from within the 3-point range, things like that. That would be extremely beneficial to them.
Yeah, this team is too talented to be one and done, man. I think that I thought they were going to win it all this year. And I just think, unfortunately, if Jason Tatum had not gotten hurt, who knows, man? Right?
But Eddie, I'm still a believer that they still would have lost. They still
maybe, but
it
would have gone 7 for sure.
Well,
right?
Maybe, because they were still losing the game that he got hurt in. They were already down by a ton of points.
Yeah.
So Anyway, all right, moving on.
All right, man. All right, so then we go to the Nuggets and Thunder. The Thunder won this series in 7 games, and I got to say that this has probably been the best series up to this point, right? Yep. Although we can probably say the current conference finals between the Knicks and Pacers might be passing that. We'll see.
Well, man. Game one for sure.
Game 1 was awesome, right? But anyway, we'll get there when we get there. But the Thunder, this team is legit, and it's too bad that the Nuggets had to go up against these guys, right? Because the Nuggets were starting to kind of mesh a little bit with the new coach, with David Adelman's Rick Adelman's son, who seems to got this team playing pretty well. And I don't know if you saw that Michael Malone is now on the ESPN broadcast now, right?
Yep, I see it. All grumpy.
Yeah, you can see it, man. But
by the way, I don't know if you saw the news. They signed Adelman as the long-term head coach. So
wow, good for him, man. That's a good move, man. That's it. He got this team playing well, and then you can see that what's happened is that Jokic seems to be a lot more demonstrative, trying to lead a little bit more, right? And maybe he felt a little bit like contained by Mike Malone. I don't know, man, but there was definitely some dysfunction going on there. I guess it was the right move. We thought it was kind of Bush League when they did it, just kind of like the Memphis Grizzlies, but it seemed to work out, right? But we saw how well Jokic played. Jokic has to be at an all-world level, as constructed right now for the Denver Nuggets to go ahead and keep winning titles, right? They've only won one, a few years ago, and I still think their starting 5 is as legit as any starting 5 there is in the NBA. They just need a bench, man. That's all they need. They need like one more player besides Russell Westbrook, because Russell Westbrook came out and played, man. That was a good signing by Denver. But the thing is, they had nobody else, man. Peyton Watson played well here and there. He was definitely a good defensive spark. but they just need one more player, man. One scoring guy off the bench, right? Some sixth player that can shoot, right? That's all they need, man. And they're going to be a problem, right? So but going to the well, let me ask before I go to the Thunder, what are your thoughts on the Nuggets, man, if anything?
Yeah, no, I agree. The one weak link, and he had a hurt shoulder, but he didn't have a great season as Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what value he has. If I could trade him for two serviceable pieces, I might do that. A bench piece and a starter piece. Someone that's not great. Like for example, here's a question for you, Eddie. Just throwing that out there. Would you sign and trade Kuminga for Michael Porter?
If I were the Nuggets?
On both sides.
I think it's kind of I don't think you would. I don't think that's the right trade. I think Porter helps space them more than Kuminga can. I think Kuminga would be a good player for them to be coming off the bench. That's correct. What I think, right?
Yeah,
but I don't think trading Michael Porter away would be the right move.
For the Nuggets.
Yeah, but I think the Nuggets can maybe trade away a draft pick and maybe like a Peyton Watson, maybe somebody else like a Strother, and then get a Kuminga, because that's all they really need. They need somebody like that, dude. I mean, you can just come off the bench and just be a scorer, because when we get there, it's pretty likely that Kuminga's not coming back, man. But we'll get there when we get there.
Okay.
But,
all right, So I'm thinking. Maybe you have a piece, Aaron Gordon was hurt in that last
game. With the hamstring. Yeah.
He also kind of mentioned it kind of crying over spilled milk, if you ask me. But, he was complaining that the games were too close together and you don't give the veterans enough time to rest and so on and so forth. But, these games are more spread out now than they've ever been in the history of the NBA playoffs. So that's kind of going on deaf ears, but I get it. The older guys, it's harder to stay healthy. Their body's taxing. It's a long season. Their body's breaking down. Like that's part of why the young kind of move ahead past the old, right? Because the season, the amount of games start to catch up with players like Aaron Gordon, like Steph Curry, it just becomes more of an issue as
older bodies have a harder time to maintain themselves over a period of time, especially for a grueling NBA schedule. That's why it's important for having a deeper team. Especially if they have aspirations to get into the postseason and maybe even win the championship, you need to have depth. And the teams that are deeper, like the Pacers, they're a problem, man. They're deep, right?
They're deep and they're young.
So if you have the depth like that, then you have something, right? A recipe. But guys, teams that are like the Nuggets, they're very top heavy. They have to depend on that starting five to be really, really good every night. And it's really hard the older the players get to maintain that. So,
but Eddie, if you see it, basically here's the formula, right? The formula is at some point, in the middle of a career, a team wins a championship. They have to pay the players that they won the championship with. And now they have no money for the bench. It happens. This is why the Celtics were so fascinating, because they were able to get that all squared away even before they won a championship. And then once they won the championship, you're like, dude, I don't see why the Celtics can't win 3 years in a row, given who they are. And then, of course, the NBA gods look and go, you think that's going to happen? Watch this. What's up? That's not going to happen. That's basically the formula. I mean, that's what the Warriors struggle with. That's what, this team struggles with. That's what, a lot of the teams that have,
Knicks struggle with.
Yeah, like a lot of these guys that have higher paid veterans that are getting a ton of money, they comes at the cost of a bench.
Correct. So that's why going to the next, the team that, the Nuggets lost to, the Thunder, this team is deep, man. I mean, look at how many players, they're playing, with, how many minutes per game that these bench players get. There's like a 10-man rotation in the playoffs. So that's unheard of, man, right now. Yep. Right. So and we got to congratulate Shai Gilgeous-Alexander because he did win the MVP. It was announced today before the game that he did win it. So congratulations. We have our opinions on that. He had a great season. He did. He's on the best team and he's the best player on the best team. And sometimes that's kind of what happens with an MVP because in my opinion, Jokic was the best player I've seen in this season by far to me. Right.
I mean, he arguably really good too. No, I was going to say he arguably had one of the best seasons of all time.
Absolutely, man. And he was ridiculous. He was ridiculous. So, but you got voter fatigue, man. We brought this up before.
And
but anyway,
I hate I hate
Yeah,
that.
no, I hear you.
And
I hear you.
that's gonna pigtail into kind of our PGI index because we use that stat. But
Yep.
that is an inherent flaw in the system.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, the voter fatigue.
Yeah.
We need some kind of objectivity to this thing, right?
Well, think about this, Eddie. If you just run the PGI index through the season, you don't have to vote. Here's your MVP.
Pretty much.
That's it. Done.
But it's all stats based, right? So yeah.
Well, but what else would it be based?
I know, but that's what I'm saying. But you have all these other, end of season awards, right? That like some of the NBA first team, second team, those are announced a little bit prior to the MVP. So I mean, yeah, we could do it. Yes, you could do it. You could do it, right? Because you have the NBA All-Star that's already happened. These are some of the factors that we have in our PGI index. Some of these that are non-stats oriented, like kind of these, awards that are subjective based. We have that as a factor. But yeah, we could do it. I mean, and I'll tell you this: I haven't plugged in the numbers for this year, but I plugged in the numbers for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, for his entire career, and he's up there, but he's not near Jokic, right? He's not even close to Jokic.
No,
right now. But for the season, I haven't done that. I can do that.
Yeah, and you even look at this postseason, which doesn't count in the MVP. I realize that, but look at, it's a joke. No, Jokic has 814 points. That's a joke.
Yeah. No, I know. Isn't that crazy? Like how many points this guy just accumulated? I mean, what's funny is that I show later on another slide is that the top 15. Jokic is going to be at the top for the entire time, even when the whole postseason's over. He's going to be the top guy, right? These other guys are not even going to come close, man. But,
you might be right. He might hold form.
He will hold form, man. He will hold form.
Speaking on the Thunder, fantastic team, fantastic depth. I think the pickups of Hartenstein and Alex Caruso were fantastic. Those Caruso defensively. I mean, he was tasked with annoying the hell out of Jokic, and it was working. And I know we're going to talk about the Minnesota game, but it's impressive how well the Nuggets were playing because the Thunder look much more talented than the Timberwolves right now. Again, the Timberwolves have yet to go home and play, but right now the Thunder, it's not even close, and the Nuggets gave them a very serious run for their money.
Yep, and we talked about this earlier. We both picked the Warriors to be at this point right now against the Thunder, right?
Yep.
So I think the Warriors, if Curry had stayed healthy, they would have taken out Minnesota because they owned them in the regular season, and that was even without Jimmy Butler. And we thought that they match up very well against the Thunder, and they do, right? I think they would have given them a better series than the Thunder have. It's all about matchups. Anytime.
It is all about matchups. I agree.
All about matchups, man.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda. He got hurt. It's that's done.
Yep. But congratulations to the Thunder.
Yes.
We're going to talk about them again in an ensuing slide. But let's go ahead and get to the Nuggets here. This is
right. Yep. So here's the round 2 elimination card for the Denver Nuggets. Ranked 11th in offensive rating, ranked 10th in defensive rating, and obviously due to the ups and downs of the games against the Oklahoma City Thunder, they rank 11th with a -5.5 net rating, which means overall they were behind by 5.5 points. I think that stat is not telling, right? Things were a lot closer than that for them, at least through the second game. And Eddie and I both talked about this. The Nuggets played the Clippers in the first round, and the Clippers, to both Eddie and I, we thought they were a serious dark horse. Like way Kawhi was playing, and it would not have surprised me if they got all the way to the finals. And the Nuggets managed to play well. Kudos to Adelman, and kudos to the shift in energy and whatever he did to get them to play better. They were definitely playing better.
For sure.
Yep. And then obviously back to what we had already kind of been kind of hammering home. The starters, ranked third, 86 points a game. And then look at the bench, 13th. There's only 16 teams in the playoffs.
Right.
And they're 13th, right? So not a very strong bench. Strengths, Joker. I mean, that's their whole world right there. That's everything, And they're a very efficient offensive team because of Joker. He knows when to pass, he knows when to shoot, he knows what's needed. So that is really their strength. Weaknesses, mentioned it before, no bench. And their perimeter defense, it's very hard, for them to get out there. They got kind of big Aaron Gordon's a big lumbering guy. Michael Porter didn't have a great season. Russell Westbrook's not historically a great defender, at least not on the perimeter. So
he used to be in college, though, man. That was his calling card in college.
Correct. It was in college, but now, he's a veteran now. He's been around the league for a long time. I'm not trying to penalize him. That's just where he's at today. you know. And so you can see the starting five here. I don't think I need to go over that. And then basically, like we talked about, their rotation really is Westbrook, like number one, and then some Peyton Watson, and then Strother made it a game or two in here and there. But really, it was a bench of two, which is Watson and Westbrook, really what it was. And
pretty much
and that's not enough. And overall assessments, I also picked small tweaks needed. I agree with Eddie. They need to pick up a bench guy or two, you know, whether that's in the draft, whether that's in, you know, some kind of veteran that they can pick up on, you know, for a mid-level exception or something. But they need to pick up, in my opinion, two bench guys, two people that can come off the bench and play. And, you know, and I guess, you know, they need to analyze Michael Porter, whether or not they want to keep him, whether or not they want to trade him. You know, he had a little bit of a rough season, as we mentioned. But, you know, we'll see what happens there. But, yeah, if they can get a couple of bench players that can produce, you know, all the better.
Yep, I agree, man. And, you know, I got to tell you, man, the one guy who really impressed me from the Nuggets starting five that was new to the starting five was Christian Brown.
Yes.
That dude is a player, man.
He is a player.
I was like, whoa, this guy came out of nowhere. And I thought when they made that move to put him in the starting lineup, you know, it was kind of not necessarily a questionable thing, but they had to do it out of necessity because, you know, he was a bench player last year. And, you know, I think helped them out be, you know, kind of a better overall team with him coming off the bench. But they had to put him in there because they lost, you know, about some of their bench players. So he came in and showed out, man. I mean, I was very impressed with this guy. He's a good player, man.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
I just want to bring that up.
I like he looks innocent, but he doesn't back down.
No, and he's very athletic, man.
He's a tough kid. Yeah.
He can jump, man, too. So, all right, man. So let's go to the next series. So, all right. So this is the Warriors. You know, when we are having this podcast, they were playing, and you know, unfortunately, the gas ran out. You know, once Curry essentially, you know, once he injured his hamstring, we knew that this was it. You know, it was going to be really, really tough. They did survive in game one without him, you know, because he played 12 minutes. And I think just the intensity from the previous series with the Houston Rockets, I think that overwhelmed the Minnesota Timberwolves initially. But then once Curry was out, they game planned on how to kind of, you know, defend this team without a really good shooter on the outside. And it proved out to be the right, you know, scheme because, you know, they struggled with the outside shot, really. You know, Jimmy Butler is a facilitator, Draymond Green's a facilitator, but you can only facilitate that well if you have somebody who can spread the floor. And they really didn't have any consistent shooters with Brandon Podziemski was kind of off, but he healed sometimes. He was streaky, right? You just didn't have that, you know, the whole offense that the Warriors have is completely centered around Curry because Curry is the gravity of Curry essentially, you know, multiple defenders go to him. So that opens up the lane for other folks to either go to the layup like a Jonathan Kuminga or Brandon Podziemski or whoever, or shoot outside, right? And that's kind of their whole game plan. So we knew that, you know, the Warriors had lost 4 games in a row. I think that might have been the first time this season that they lost 4 games in a row. But and it happened at the worst time of the season, right, in the playoffs. But, you know, if he was healthy, they would have won. I think they would have beat the Wolves if he was healthy. But, you know, it could have been that the previous series with the Rockets pretty much took the toll on Curry, you know?
Yeah.
The older guys, right? It took the toll on them, you know? So, but if anything, you know.
I said it then, and I still believe it now. The death nail for the Warriors was when they lost Game 6 at home against Houston.
Yeah. They lost a couple days of rest.
That was the death nail.
They
could not afford to go to Minnesota, rest a day or two, and then play, you know, I believe it was that Sunday and play in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Like, and they managed to pull that one off, but it was at the cost of Curry.
No, I agree, man. I agree.
Yeah.
So, like, if we look at, you know, just some of the stats here, so you can see, like, Jimmy Butler is the one that's completely taken over as far as the total amount of fantasy points that the Warriors had for the entire playoff run. He accumulated 423 points. You could see, like, in game 1, there was a tie between him and Brandon Podziemski for fantasy points per minute. In game 2, that's game 4. Game 5, you can see that Brandon Podziemski was the best one. But then, you know, in game 5 on the bench, Moses Moody is at 1.77. I mean, that's really, but look at game 4 with Guy Santos. 4.3. Dude, in 4 minutes, he had 17.2 fantasy points. That's ridiculous, dude.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. You know, I think Kerr needs to figure out, you know, I understand because he was on the radio show today. I heard his conversation with the radio host today. And, you know, they were talking about Kuminga, right? And they were talking about, like, you know, after Curry got hurt, Kuminga essentially, you know, he's out of the rotation, but then he was kind of thrust into the rotation because out of necessity, right? They needed some scoring, and he's probably their best scorer outside of Jimmy Butler when Steph Curry's not playing, right? But Jimmy Butler's role kind of was more a facilitator, offensive facilitator who has some offense, kind of like Draymond Green. Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler had a similar style of game in the playoffs, right? They're both facilitators, they're both high IQ players. One's probably a better defender than the other one, and the other one's a better offensive player. You put those two together, and you have a serious dynamic problem, right? When you have both of those skill sets in one player, that's a problem, right? I mean, just imagine those two skill sets together, right? But Jonathan Kuminga was thrust into the starting lineup because they had to, but they were, a lot of the fans have been questioning why isn't Kerr playing Kuminga, because he's kind of, a lot of fans believe that he's kind of thwarted his career a little bit, kind of thwarted his development because of his up and in and out of the starting lineup, this and that. And bottom line is that Kuminga got hurt at the absolute worst time because, and the thing, he was balling, dude. He was balling when he got hurt, right? Then they made the trade for Butler, and then Kuminga had not been playing, and then he came back to a completely different team, man. And he needed to figure out how to integrate himself back in. And Kerr had been kind of highlighting to the audience today that the reason what he needs out of Kuminga is rebounding primarily and ball movement. And those are two things that he doesn't really do very well, right? He's primarily a very good scorer. And I think, Kerr said in so many words that, he and I have a good relationship. Whether he wants to stay here or not, I don't know. But, I understand if he wants to go elsewhere because he feels like he probably brings some, he can play more and do more. But in our system and how we are constructed as a team with what we have as, 3 Hall of Fame players on the team, we know what works. We had a recipe that worked, and he came to a different team, and he needed to kind of do all these other things that are not necessarily that come very easy for him. And that's part of the reason why he was not in the rotation and then was thrust into the rotation out of necessity. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to this guy in the offseason. I tend to think that he's probably gone because I think they would have signed him, by now or shortly thereafter. I just think that they feel that he's a good trading chip because he, part of what happened in the playoffs is that became like an audition, right, for other teams to kind of look at the possibilities of having someone like him. So he's being looked at potentially as trade bait for bringing somebody else on the team. That's what I think. So
yeah. I mean, I primarily agree with you. The one thing that I don't want to necessarily argue with the majority of fans, but it does. It makes me think twice when all fans equate success with scoring average.
Yeah.
And right now, that's all Kuminga can do. Could he score 27 points a game? Yeah, I believe he can. If you give him enough minutes, if he gets enough opportunities, he could do it. But what's that look like on a team?
Yeah.
If they're losing by 40 and he's scoring 30, who cares?
Well, that's what I mean. Look at Jordan Clarkson. He can score it, right? He could score that easily, but he doesn't do all these other little things that are needed.
He could score it well. But the frustrating thing about Kuminga is that he's very athletic. He could play excellent defense. He could rebound if he just applied himself.
Right.
But, in his mind, and you and I talked about this, and we may have talked about it last week, so I don't want to repeat material here. But, one of the reasons that Kuminga was so successful when Curry was gone was because he's the only guy that attacks the hoop. Every other player depends on Curry, not only because of his gravity, but also because of the fact that they're, I don't want to say submissive, but they understand their role. They don't push their role. While Kuminga's like, screw you, I don't fit in that role. I'm the kingpin, kind of mentality. And so that's great, but when you have someone like Curry, we talked about, we were comparing Curry and Jokic. To me, the difference between Curry and Jokic is Curry has gravity. Things come to him. While Joker distributes. He goes from the inside out.
Yeah.
So he can find the open man. He creates opportunity with his ability on the court. While Curry, with his skill, attracts everyone, which opens it up for everybody else.
Right.
Right. And so that's the part that Kuminga has a hard time understanding.
It's his IQ. It's his basketball IQ.
It could be. It could also be that he's just an alpha player, and he refuses. I mean, you look at Draymond, for example. How many times have we asked Draymond to calm it down on the court, to do this, to do that? He doesn't. Draymond is who he is. It just so happens that who he is fits very well within the system, right? So in a lot of ways, Kuminga has that same stubbornness in him. It's just, dude, you're never going to be the top dog on this team while Curry's here. It's never going to happen. We need you to do these things. And he's like, yeah, nope, that's not what I do.
Right. I agree with you, man.
What I do. And
There's
I appreciate that. I appreciate the ego.
Him.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate him having that attitude, but it just doesn't fit, man. It just doesn't fit.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you, man. But anyway, so before we get on to the next slide, which we'll talk a lot more about the Warriors, let's talk a little bit about the Wolves. All right, we know this Anthony Edwards, dude. This guy is a problem, right? I mean, he showed out big time in this series, man. And when he puts his head to it, he can definitely take over a game because he's uber athletic, man. Right? I mean, you can see like his point total right now to this point. He's at 495.5, and this is as of the game. Yesterday, not today, because we only have right. Or this is the last series. Sorry, this is the last series. I did update it for the next series, but you can see this guy. I mean, he is definitely their best player. But what's interesting in game 2, Mike Conley became the most efficient player from a fantasy points per minute standpoint. Playing 26 minutes and scored 36.2 points. But this whole team revolves around Anthony Edwards. But the real surprise, and we talked about this last time, Julius Randle has found himself on this team because he was struggling earlier, bro. He was struggling big time. But in this, we'll talk about the next series soon. But he definitely became a problem for the Warriors because the Warriors had no answer to contain both of those players from a defensive standpoint, right?
Correct.
I mean, Draymond Green he took his turn with Julius Randle. Also, he took his turn against Anthony Edwards. He's their best defender. Jimmy Butler took his turns, this and that. But those two were a matchup problem. And I think that, inserting, someone like a Jonathan Kuminga helped kind of contain some of these guys initially for a little while. But he's not the help defender like these other guys are, right? He can do it one-on-one up to a certain point, right? But these guys, the Wolves, as constructed, they are a pretty deep team. You can see they play about eight deep right now. Naz Reid is a really good player. Nickeil Alexander-Walker has been playing really well too, and then Dante DiVincenzo, dude. I mean, this team, they're constructed to be a problem. The thing is that they need Anthony Edwards to be on all the time, and they need Julius Randle to be on all the time for them to be successful, right? So
I agree. And one of the things that I really am envious of this team is they have a great combination of length and power, right? Because both Julius Randle isn't particularly long, but he plays strong. Anthony Edwards can play strong, but Jaden McDaniels is 6'9", 6'10". He's very long.
And he's a really good defender, man.
Rudy Gobert is super long. Naz Reid is long. And so there's a lot of teams where if you have a shorter team, that causes a lot of problems. Just because of their length. And so I think they do, but you're right. The motor is Anthony Edwards. And dude, for those of you, dude, there are just moments, and I'm not there's just flashes, not really like as a player, but dude, he reminds me of Jordan so much.
He does.
Like just the way he moves and the way he kind of does this
his
stuff.
His swag.
Just his, and when he's smiling and when it's just like, dude, you just remind me. I'm not saying you're Jordan.
Offensively, he does. Offensively, he does. Offensively, because defensively, he's not there yet.
No, he's not there.
He can be, but he's not there yet.
But he just, when I see him, I'm like, damn, dude. Like, I wish he would have fell a notch, even though the Warriors said they never would have picked him up, and I would have been so pissed. But anyway, good player. Good player. We're going to talk about the next series because that's exposing some things. But yes, good team.
So let's go on to the next slide. This is like the Warriors elimination slide. You can see that their offensive rating in the playoffs, they were 13th. They were near the bottom, right? The defensive rating, they were kind of middle, a little bit worse in the middle, and then their net rating, they were kind of on the lower middle part of it. Their starter scoring is horrendous, bro. Look at that. They were 15th at 66. 0.6, I think it is. And then their bench scoring is third. That was their strength. We saw it, man. Their strength was their bench, and it has been there in the entire playoff run. Once, like I said, we already talked about Stephen Curry. Once this whole offense revolves around the gravity of him, right? And that's why it was so, Jimmy Butler was so effective for the Warriors because prior to his arrival, the Warriors were very outside perimeter shooting driven. That's pretty much what their game was. They didn't have anybody that can take it to the rack other than Jonathan Kuminga. but then score at a good clip from the free throw line, and that's what Jimmy Butler brought, right? So, Jimmy Butler became a facilitator, had some offensive game more than Draymond Green does. You essentially had two Draymond Greens on the court at the same time, which is a problem because Draymond Green is a matchup problem for most players, from a defensive standpoint. He matches up very well against anybody defensively. Jimmy Butler doesn't have the same tenacity as Draymond Green, but offensively he's way more skilled and can get to the rack and score free throws at a good clip, right? But once Curry was out, they were screwed, right? But what was encouraging though this year, bro? Quentin Post has emerged as a decent player, right? Gabe Santos has emerged as a damn good player, man. That guy he's earned some more playing time for sure, dude.
I agree.
I'm surprised he didn't play as much as he should have because I thought his energy off the bench was really, really good. We also have learned that Moses Moody, has a role on this team, right? Even though
you see he had surgery on his thumb.
Oh, I didn't see that. So that's the problem is that's what's affecting him.
Because he had a horrendous series against the Wolves.
That's the reason, right? So now we know, right? But he didn't complain. He was out there playing hard. So let me ask you this, bro. Do you, as far as off-season changes, we know Kuminga more than likely is probably not coming back. Of the bench guys, I mean, everybody here outside of Moses Moody is essentially, I think, and Trace Jackson Davis, but Gary Payton, Buddy Hield, I think Kevon Looney, I think they're all free agents, if I remember correctly.
Correct, so, yeah. Kevon Looney and Gary Payton are. Buddy Hield has 2 more years and then has a player option.
Okay, he does. Okay, cool.
And then Moody just signed an extension, so I think he's got 3 more years starting next year.
2 more years. He has 2 more years after this year, so he has 2 more years.
Okay.
Or no, you're right. I think he has 3.
Okay, yeah.
You're right. Yeah, he has 3. So, okay, so let me ask you this. Yeah. Do you think that Gary Payton stays? Do you think that Kevon Looney stays?
No.
Well, I think so too. Okay.
I think they want to stay. I think they want to stay.
Yes.
Here, look, Eddie, and I just want to touch on your weaknesses because I think they're both spot on. But there's one weakness you didn't touch on, and that is they seriously need a player that can create his own offense.
Like Jonathan Kuminga.
Like Jonathan Kuminga, but that is more understands
well-rounded. It's more well-rounded.
Yes, more well-rounded. But they are dying for some because that was the one thing Minnesota exposed. Dude, no one could create, including Jimmy Butler. No one could create. And I'm like,
he's not fast enough anymore, right? He's not quick.
Exactly. Yeah. He needs people slashing. He needs activity. And that activity was way easier when Curry was in the corner and there was 2 people on him. All of a sudden, he's got one less player to worry about. But yeah, so I would just add that to the weakness. But yes, I love Gary Payton. I love his energy. I think he plays bigger than his size. I think he's great. But I think we need a taller defender. I think we need someone that can, chase down the perimeter a little better, and length tends to do that. Kevon Looney, he's great, but he's so specialized in what we can use him for.
They're both specialists, man.
Yes.
I mean, both of those guys are specialists. They can only give you like 5 to 10 minutes max per, right? If they can. Trace Jackson Davis, I think, is also in that same mold, honestly. I think that's part of the reason why he kind of slipped is because he didn't have that perimeter game that a lot of these GMs covet. He's more of a traditional kind of center type that wasn't big enough to be drafted higher. But you can see he's got limitations, but he plays hard, man. So I
agree. But like for Kevon Looney, like if you ask me, and I think they're going to roughly cost about the same. I'd rather have Steven Adams than Kevon Looney to
dude, the Warriors should go after Steven Adams. Dude.
Yeah,
I mean, see how much value that guy brought.
He's the king of that role. Like he's the best you can have at that role.
Absolutely. Yes. And that's who they should go after, bro. They need somebody like that. Okay. Yeah. Anybody, even Brooke Lopez is perfect.
Yeah. Well, Brooke Lopez got some offense. Steven Adams really has no offense. But in reality, neither does Kevon Looney.
Just somebody like that. That's all you need, man. Somebody like that who can rebound, do the dirty work, and can score inside. That's what Steven Adams can do. But Brooke Lopez would be even a better fit. But he's gonna be more.
Yeah. So in my opinion, I think both Payne and Looney are gone. It's going to be interesting what kind of year Trace Jackson Davis has next year. He had a good rookie season, not such a great sophomore season. So it's going to be really interesting. I think, I think Quentin Post needs to work on his inside footwork.
Yeah, he needs to get bulked up a little bit.
Yeah, he needs to bulk up. He needs to, practice his defense. And then if possible, try to work on that release and make it just a half a second faster, just a little bit quicker. And you've got the master and Steph Curry to teach you that. So, if you can get that aspect of your game there, I think he could easily be kind of, at least if not the starter, the immediate backup in the center position.
Right. Yeah. I'm just trying to move this thing around here, man.
Yeah,
It's in the way. Anyway, I just figured something out here, man.
Yeah.
So apologies for the audience. We got this new platform. We're still trying to figure it out. That's why we kind of had that little, loop that early at the beginning that Twan had, before he brought up the slides, we had that. It's just that we're getting used to this.
We're figuring it out. We're
figuring it out, man. But anyway, anyway, I see this team still being a problem next year.
Right.
I think that they're gonna get some players next year that the complexion of this team is going to be completely different. But I think that the big three are a problem. Brandon Pajemski, I think, is a keeper. I think Quentin Post is a keeper. I think Buddy Hield's already signed, right? Moses Moody is a keeper. And then after that, it's kind of like, well, Trace Jackson Davis more than likely will play. But I think Gary Payton, Kevon Looney, Jonathan Kuminga, they're all going to get packaged up along with draft picks to get somebody. That's what I think.
Yeah, we'll see what they can do.
Yeah. So, all right, man, let's go on to the next series. So, all right, so now we are into the third round of series. There's only 2 games left going on in the NBA right now. And this game right here, this actually finished game 2 tonight. And the Thunder just beat the Wolves tonight. So now it's a 2-0 lead, whereas this shows a 1-0 lead. But I want to just go ahead and just, indicate that, what I've seen in this series so far is that the Thunder's overall defensive tenacity, which is what the Warriors did to the Thunder in game 1, the Thunder are doing it all the time, right? Yeah. and the Thunder, the Wolves, we saw that in the series against the Warriors. They can get careless sometimes, and they can get turnover prone, and doing that against a very defensive-minded team with the Thunder is a problem, right? And that was noted by some of the other analysts that cover the games, that the Wolves can sometimes get careless. And the thing is that they have multiple guys that they can go ahead and throw at Anthony Edwards and contain him, right? They have a lot of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can be a problem. Lou Dort can be a problem for him. Jalen Williams. Those 3 right there are so versatile from a defensive standpoint that they can take turns and give Anthony Edwards a different look and force somebody else like a Julius Randle to beat him. Now, in game 1, Julius Randle had a great game, right? He had 37.1 fantasy points. He was the most efficient one. But in game 2, he was nowhere to be found, bro. Yep. Right? It was all Anthony Edwards, and then his Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, his cousin Nickeil Alexander-Walker actually showed up in game 2 tonight, right? So he actually had a pretty good game. But other than that, man, I mean, that's I think the formula that the Thunder have found is that if they can find a way to contain Anthony Edwards and make somebody else beat him, then great. Let them take their shots, right? Because Julius Randle, as good as he is, he's sometimes inconsistent, and with a bigger team like these guys, he's not going to be able to bully ball like he did last series against the Warriors, right? So that's my observation, man.
I'm going to give you a kind of a scary stat. I don't think I have the numbers exactly right, but somewhere along the middle of the second half or towards the end of the second quarter, the Thunder were shooting something like 3 for 13 or 3 for 16 from the 3-point field. And they still had like an 8-point lead. Yeah. And that's when I was like, dude, this team is so scary.
Yeah.
Because if any other modern day team has that low of a 3-point percentage, they're going to be losing. And these guys just continue. And, we could probably have a half-hour argument about, if you had to start a team, who would you rather start with, SGA or Anthony Edwards? And we could probably go back and forth. And that's fine. Some people will go Anthony Edwards. Some people will go SGA. I don't really care. But here's the problem. Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, they're both better than Julius Randle.
Yeah.
I take them in a heartbeat. So the 2 and the 3 are already better than
the second best player on the Wolves.
Correct. So the Thunder is just deep. They are good. Frankly, obviously based on what's happened right now, it'd be an exciting series if you had the Thunder's Pacers, because it's just going to go nuts.
And I think that's what's going to happen, honestly, bro.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
I think so too, but I don't want to discount the Wolves and I don't want to discount the Knicks. Knicks, if they can win tomorrow and then win their first one in Indiana, then it's a completely different series. The Wolves are a little bit of a hole. They need to win Game 3. If the Wolves don't win Game 3, it's over. I'm just telling you, it's over.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yep. And check. So I want to just point out the totals right now. So Anthony Edwards is at a 527.8 as now. That's updated now. So 527.8 as of today, before today's game. So I didn't update. I was trying to update before we started, because I had it almost done, but then I had to kind of do some work. And anyway, I couldn't get it done. But this is going to be higher now, right? And then you got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Look at he's 609.5. All right, he's getting close. He's getting close to Jokic, but I don't think anybody's going to surpass Jokic.
He needs 3 more games.
Yeah, he needs more games, right? So, but yeah, I mean, he, he probably will. I think Shai would probably be the one that can catch up because, he's going to have all these games, right? Especially if they advance, right? But it just goes to show you how much Jokic was better than everybody else in this playoff series. But anyway, right now that it's up 2-0. You're right. I think that the Wolves need to win Game 3, or it's like it's over, man.
And obviously, we're not stating any rocket science. Obviously, a team goes down 3-0, but
you're screwed. You're done.
You're screwed.
You're done.
I think they need to win. In my opinion, they need to win Game 3 and 4.
Right.
They lose either one of those games, they're screwed.
Yep. And by the way, there's no typo here on this slide. By the way, Twan's pick was Warriors in 7 because this is before the playoffs started. We made our predictions, and I had the Clippers in 6 in this, and we were both wrong. All right, so
both dead wrong
there.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next slide, bro. This is the last coverage, but we now saw that the Pacers. We talked about it earlier on before we got going on the playoff series. Like this game was unbelievable. The Pacers came back from a 14-point deficit with 2 minutes and 36 seconds, or right around there, and they made up this 14. And they've done this already once before in the previous series. They came back from they came back within 29 seconds of when they were down 7 points. I mean, this team is like a problem, man. I mean, from an offensive standpoint, Halliburton has no fear, man. He has no fear, right? And
go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, what I was going to say is that the Pacers, because of their depth, they're exposing the limitations that the Knicks have with only playing like six and a half players, and they've been doing it from the very outset. You can see, look at how many minutes that the Knicks players are playing, dude. It's crazy. You see that Karl Anthony, 3 guys are in the 41 to 44 minute range, right? You can see that you could argue that the Pacers, because they have 2 that are in the 42 range, but look at how many more players they play on the bench. I mean, they spread minutes around big time. Whereas the Knicks, dude, if this goes farther than if it goes to 6, which I don't think it will, but if it does, the Knicks are going to have no energy, bro, to keep playing, man. Especially with the rotation that they have. So I'm calling this over in 5, dude. I think the Pacers, I think the Pacers are a team. It's their year, bro. I just think that they are a team that's kind of just. They're getting the momentum right at the right time.
They got a little destiny feel to them.
For sure.
I agree.
For sure.
That bounce that
was amazing, dude.
That was like no freaking way.
That was amazing. And you know what's funny?
That Kawhi shot. When he was
exactly. That's exactly what it was. That's exactly what it was. And it was funny because I was watching the game, and then my wife and daughter were upstairs, and I was like, no freaking way. I was like, and they're like, what happened? I'm like, you got to see this. So they came down and watched it, dude. And I rewound it so they could see it live. And then my wife's like, oh, no. And my daughter, dude, they don't care about us. They're like, oh, my God, that's amazing. Let me watch it again. So they were like,
then he does the Reggie Miller.
Yeah, that was freaking classic. He's doing the Reggie Miller. Hey, you did that in honor of Reggie Miller against New York, because that was exactly who Reggie Miller did it against New York, right?
Exactly, against the Knicks. Yep.
Yeah, in New York.
Exactly. My biggest kind of, I don't understand. The Knicks are Thibodeau's a defensive coach.
Yeah.
How you let Naismith shoot 5 3-pointers pretty much wide open, because he was pretty much wide open.
Yep.
How you let that happen? That to me was, of all the things that, I don't want to talk about chokes or anything, but dude, you cannot let that dude that free. Take the 2. If you got to, take the 2. Give up the 2. Don't give him the 3.
Yep.
And that was really the death of it. That's what really got everything going.
I agree, man. And Naismith, dude, I mean, he came from the Celtics. I don't know if you knew that, but he came from the Celtics. They drafted him, and he's become quite a good little player. And early on in the season, these guys were struggling, and the one thing that was, the one person that wasn't in the lineup was Naismith. They were struggling without Naismith. Remember, I was saying, what's going on with the Pacers, man? For what reason they weren't clicking? We thought maybe like Halliburton, learning the yawn from Steph Curry from Team USA, yawning that just kind of messed up his shot. I don't know, man, but we were kind of befuddled as to what's going on with this team. Is it that, or is it Naismith? Anyway, they figured it out, man, and I think this is their year, man. It's going to be the Thunder against the Pacers. unless something drastic happens with an injury, right? That's the only.
That's
anyway,
going
I
to be
just think
exciting.
that's
And then
the
one
two
final
deepest teams in the
observation.
playoffs, by the way. They're the two deepest teams in the playoffs.
Yep.
So,
and one observation on my part is, dude, like the Knicks, whenever TJ McConnell wanted to go for a layup, dude, no one could stop him.
Yeah.
That dude just had like 6 layups. I'm like, dude, can someone stop this dude?
Dude,
like,
and look at his efficiency. 1.63.
You know?
Dude, 1.63 efficiency, man. That's crazy.
No, he's and like it seemed like he could score at will.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole vibe I got. I'm like, dude, just leave this guy in already. Like, what are you taking him out for?
Yeah, totally, man. So anyway, so that's my call. Anyway, let's go to the last slide before we go on to our next segment. So this is I went ahead and just kind of updated based on the overall top 15. We've been doing this throughout the entire playoffs. I wanted to kind of show from a fantasy points perspective who are the leaders from both an overall fantasy points perspective as well as a fantasy points per minute. So the one on the left is for fantasy points and the one on the right is for fantasy points per minute. And right now you can see the ones that are highlighted in red. Those are the players that are no longer playing in the playoffs. They're eliminated, right? But Jokic, you can see the big disparity between him and Shea. Although I think Shea will probably catch up to him probably the next 5 or 6 games, right? He should, right? Unless something happens. But you can see, the players like Jason Tatum, Jimmy Butler, they're still up there. But some of these other guys that are playing more games, they're eventually going to catch up to them, right? And those guys are going to come off. But anyway, but you can see right now. The most inefficient guy, and I don't know why Mikal Bridges. Oh, no, sorry, take that back. Aaron Gordon is the least points out of all the guys right now. But from an efficiency standpoint, he is the worst, right? If you look at the next slide or the next the one on the right, you can see right now Nikola Jokic is the number one guy from both the fantasy points as well as fantasy points per minute. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being number 2. So right there, those are the 2 guys that got the most MVP votes. Jason Tatum was also kind of one of the guys that got votes for MVP. So you can see from an efficiency standpoint how some of these best players, why they are so good is because they're efficient when they are playing for the minutes that they get. So anyway, so anything you want to point out before we move on to the next segment, bro?
No, all good. I mean, just Jokic is impressive. What can you say? I mean, the dude is a beast.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, man. So, all right. So let's go on to the next. So this is the PGI Index. So this is a measure of true overall greatness. This is something that Twan and I had created about almost 2 weeks ago now. It's probably 2 weeks ago. But what I wanted to highlight here is because last week when I was going over this podcast, I was trying to remember what did I do for the All-Star selection? How did I do this, right? Because I couldn't remember what my calculation was. But what I did is I used, the mean of NBA teams in the history of the NBA. You look at the mean or the average, it's been 15 teams. So I said, okay, if there's 15 teams and on average this is a 12-man rotation, right? And 24 players are selected for the All-Star game. Oh, then that comes out to be 7.5. And I just rounded up to a round number, which is 8. That's how I got to 8.
Okay.
That's why I wanted to explain it, because last week I couldn't remember how I did it. Initially, it was 3 points for an All-Star selection. Now it's 8, and I wanted to explain why I got to that rationale. So that's the only reason why I wanted to go ahead and show this slide.
Gotcha. And that's 15 teams for the league, not 15 teams per conference.
No, that's 15 teams for the entire league on average for the history of the NBA.
Okay.
Which is part of the reason why I got 150 points for MVP. It's the same rationale I used.
Got it.
Because I don't want to penalize those older players, for not having as many teams in the league versus the teams right now. There's 30 teams. I wanted to kind of be fair about that, right?
Yeah. I think that's the right approach. We need to balance. We need to find averages from all generations, right?
Right. Yep. But I don't want to go through all this again because I've already went through it. But this is the criteria that we use. So okay, now
here we go.
I want to play by ear here, bro. Now Twan and I were, it depended on how long the first segment was going to go, and it went a little longer than we anticipated. Our plan was to go ahead and roll out all 75 players in this episode. But if we do that, we're going to go another hour and some change, man. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and roll this out for this week only. We're going to go ahead and cover the teams, the 61 to 76, and how we compare and contrast against the ESPN rankings against our PGI index. And next week we'll go ahead and roll into 51 to 60, right? So we'll do that, and then every week we'll do that from here on out until we get right. So it's going to next 5 weeks we're going to spend time on this. So anyway, what I wanted to show here is
and again, before you begin, Eddie,
Yeah.
I do want to remind the audience, the players that are on here are only the players that ESPN ranked as their top 76 players.
Correct.
76 because there was a tie between some number. I don't know what number was tied, but that created 76 players. We did not. We have since been ranking other players that, just as a preview, that will impact this chart. But for this exercise, we're only touching the ones that ESPN ranked as the top 76 greatest players as of what, 2 years ago?
Yeah, correct. That's correct.
Correct.
So here's, actually it might have been 3 years ago. But anyway, so 2 or 3 years ago. But anyway, I am still working on doing more PGI Index projections or numbers for all different players, including players that are playing today. And I've done a few more. But I told JJ about this before our podcast today, that we had come up with this, and he didn't know that we were doing this, right? And he's like, dude, I dig that freaking concept. I'm like, well, so when we do this, we're going to talk about this. I want you to, come up with some names that you want us to compare, and hopefully I'll have them done. Then I can kind of tell you, right? Dude, I love this. Dude, that's a great idea. So you love the idea, man. So, all right. So anyway, so let's get into it. So what I want to explain here to the audience here is that what you see here is, from on the left column is our index rankings using our system that I showed you, the metrics or the categories that we use to come up with this index, right? And what I wanted to show here on the right is that the ESPN rankings, these are the subjective rankings that ESPN provided when the NBA 75-year team was announced. They went in and ranked them from 1 to 76, okay? And that's what you're seeing here. Now, the legend that you see here on the far right will tell you, okay, if the comparison matches with our PGI index, meaning whatever ESPN ranked subjectively matches what our PGI index shows, then that's going to be highlighted in green, okay? If it's that lighter green shade, then that means we're 5 slots off, meaning that our PGI index actually showed a 5-slot difference from what ESPN said. And then if you go to the yellow, that's saying 10-slot difference, right? And then the X's or the letters highlighted in red tells you that it's more than 10 slots difference between them, right? The other thing I want to point out is that if you see a bolded name, that's telling you that that player is a current player, okay? So that's why I wanted to go ahead and highlight what that means. Now, the other thing that I want to point out is on the ESPN rankings, you're going to see a parentheses, okay? What that parentheses is where they are ranked on the PGI Index rankings. So Dave Cowens, for instance, ESPN has him at rank 61. Our PGI Index has him at the 27th ranked player according to our index for the top 75 players. That's
crazy.
That's a huge difference, bro.
That is a humongous difference.
It's huge. I mean, so it begs the question: what were the criteria to select?
Correct.
Dave Cowens being at 61 versus other players that are above him, right? And what's interesting that I want to point out, and I'm not going to go through every one. I'll probably go through every one of them since we have the time. But what's interesting is that Bill Walton, he's ranked higher on ESPN than Dave Cowens is, and Bill Walton is dead last on our system, right? Correct. Now, this is normalized by the amount of years that Bill Walton played. Now, I think when these people vote, subjectively for these rankings, they're taking into account Bill Walton's, college career, because he had a stellar college career.
Correct. As did Kareem.
Correct. But you could argue that Bill Walton was just as impactful as a Kareem in college, right? Because he's considered one of the best players of all time in college, and he had probably one of the better games in the history of the NCAA tournament in that when he played, right? So Correct. I think there's a little bit of that subjectivity that's coming into when these guys vote and put these rankings. I don't know what system they're using. We reveal what our system is, and we're open kimono about how we're doing it, right? And you're seeing it right here, bro. Bill Walton, according to our system, is the lowest ranked guy out of all of these top 76 players the NBA announced a few years ago, right? That's interesting, right? So let's keep going.
That is fantastic. And so looking at this list, if and again, this is tongue in cheek, if we're going to use the PDI index ranking as the source of truth, then the only thing that ESPN got correct was Paul Pierce.
Correct. According from from 61 to 76.
Correct.
From the players that are ranked from 61 to 76.
On this list that we're seeing right now, Paul
Correct.
Pierce is the only one that we agree with.
Correct. That's correct.
Yes.
But you can see Robert Parrish, he's 58 on our index, but
Correct.
he's 63 on ESPN. Hal Greer is 60 on our list, so right above Chris Paul, yet he's 64 here. Lenny Wilkins, interesting enough, 65. He's lower at 72. Paul Azarin, however you say his name. I mean, he's higher because he's not seen here, right? But he was at 66. He's at 43. Now, the interesting thing here is Dennis Rodman, right? He's 75. I mean, almost the last guy, according to our index, right? He's 67. What's interesting enough, and I can only tell you this now, even though we're not talking about this player right now, but I did the comparison because everybody wants to compare Draymond Green versus Dennis Rodman, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to say who's the better player. Very subjective, man. Very subjective. Well, I can tell you right now that the Dennis Rodman's number was less than Draymond Green. Okay. Now Dennis Rodman is at 2,039.8. Draymond Green is roughly, and I forget. I think I might have.
Is Draymond Green on this list at all?
He is not on our. No, he's not. He's not one of the guys that have been listed as a top guy in the NBA, a top 75. He's not, but he is. He has an index score of 2,190. 2,190.
So on this current list, he'd be 74th.
Yes. No, he'd be 73rd. Oh, yeah, 74, between 74. Yeah, because he's higher than Reggie Miller.
He'd bump everybody down. So
he's higher than Reggie. Yeah, so he'd be 74th. Correct.
Yep.
He could be 74th. Correct. If he were elected as a 75-year player,
and his career's not over.
Correct. Now, what's interesting enough is another guy that I want to point out that is part of that's not part of here, but I want to just do this as a comparison. Klay Thompson. He actually
for those of you, real quick,
for
those of you that don't remember, I'm going to tell that story. When they announced this, Klay Thompson lovingly walked into practice with the jersey number 77 because he felt that he should have been in this list and he wasn't. So he proclaimed himself the 77th best player.
Correct.
Right? Kind of tongue in cheek and kind of poking fun. So Eddie, based on our system, what was his number?
His number is 2642. So he's actually higher than.
So he's not even on this list. He's higher than 61st.
Correct. He's actually, according to we have a different ranking right now, but I only wanted to focus on the top 75. But I just wanted to kind of give some perspective. That's all I wanted to do. Is there are some players that are playing today, according to our system, that actually would take some of these guys that have been elected into the top 75 out of this.
So just those two guys alone, if we entered them,
correct.
Dennis Rodman and Bill Walton would be out of the top 75.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Just that as an example. Another one that I've got my eye on is Russell Westbrook, who's a very polarizing player.
Yes.
Right? And he's an active player. And ESPN ranked him at 68th. They're now 41st. Now, I do want to be fair because the stats that we're pulling are from today and the stats that they pulled were from 3 years ago.
Correct.
So there is a little bit of an imbalance.
Yes.
Right? But that only applies to players that are active in those 3 years. So, for example, Dave Cowens hasn't been active for a long time.
Right. So his numbers don't move.
So he should have been nowhere near the 61st player. He should have been significantly higher even 3 years ago. And one could argue that 3 years ago, he might have even been higher than 27.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you got it, bro. You got it. But look at, Russell Westbrook in our system is ranked 41st. Now, you're going to see in the ensuing weeks other players, right? We're just showing you the bottom 15 of the top 75. But Russell Westbrook, you will see in a couple of weeks, not next week, but the week after that. You will see where he ranks amongst other guys that are on this top 75 list.
Yep.
Carmelo Anthony, we were only one off. Okay.
Yes.
So, that's almost like a dark green. It's pretty close, right? So
it's almost 69. There, within 5.
Right. So exactly. We're within 5. Therefore, it's a light green. So then Dolph Shays, there's a 16 slot difference.
Correct.
We have him at 54. Anthony Davis, dude, look how high he is in our list. He's 34.
He's 34th.
He's 34, and he's being ranked 71. So that tells me that they, this rankings that ESPN put, they put a big emphasis on championships, man. They put a
They
big
do.
emphasis on championship.
And again, that's okay.
Right.
But we need to understand what it's weighted at. What is the
Correct.
weight?
We don't know what relative to what, right?
Because
no relative.
because
no math.
Because I will guarantee exactly. Because I will guarantee you this: if the championships are so weighted, I guarantee you that Bill Russell's nowhere near Michael Jordan, but yet he has 5 more rings. So, and that was the reason we put this together.
That's why we did this.
Yeah, I don't understand
why we
that
did
thought
this.
process.
Yeah, exactly. We wanted to come up with some mathematical way to show that, objectively speaking, taking into account all of their stats and coming up with some kind of weighting system for all of their accolades, that, you know, it's a knob that we turn, right? Mm-hmm. That applies to everybody else. We kind of standardized, you know, the scoring system for all of the categories. We came up with a standard to come up with a number that tells you how valuable or how, you know, how great this player really was relative to everybody else, using the same categories that everybody else was using or was being measured against, right? Yeah. So that's the reason why we did this, right? But
no, and I agree, and you know, and I'll be honest. To be fair, I look at the active players with a grain of salt, because, for example, if this was 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, Anthony Davis didn't have a championship in 3 years ago. So if they redid it again, I would assume that if ESPN redid it today, Anthony Davis would be higher than what he is now, right? He would be higher than 71, would be my assumption, right? So with the active players, I do take it with a grain of salt, because that's a moving target, right? And we're pulling data 3 years later, right? So that, but when I look at like players like Billy Cunningham, right? I'm an old guy. I only knew Billy Cunningham as the coach of the 76ers. I never watched Billy Cunningham play. I only knew him as the head coach. But look at, like, his numbers have been there 15 years before this list came out.
Right. And he's never talked about.
Never, and we have him 36th.
Yes.
I mean, that to me, those are where I find this fast. Dave DeBusschere, right? 46. Like, these are significant jumps. These are, and no one can explain that, because I think what we're doing, not only are we weighting championships,
right,
but we're romanticizing the players we watched play. That's really what I think is really happening. So somebody never watched Billy Cunningham, so you're like, just drop him 10 spots.
I agree with you.
I never watched him play.
Correct. I agree with you.
Like,
this is a way of bringing back the old school to relevance.
Correct.
Really.
Right. Correct.
And measured against the current players as of today. Now, what's interesting about this index that we created, bro, what I can tell you is that what weighs heavy and what makes an index of a player increase or high, let's their baseline being very high, is in the amount of years that they played, if they accumulated stats very efficiently. Meaning, like, they accumulated a lot of points, a lot of rebounds, a lot of assists, a lot of steals, all these categories that are positive, that they accumulated them at a very efficient rate.
Correct.
And what I mean by that is, for instance, like a Jason Kidd or like a Vince Carter, who played a lot of years. If you look at how many stats they have accumulated versus somebody who only played for like 10 seasons, their numbers are going to be higher because they played more games and more over more seasons, right? But if you normalize it to the amount of seasons that they played, the average that they get per season is less. So
Eddie, let me ask you this, just kind of, you know, being devil's advocate, being a Joe fan here.
Go ahead.
Doesn't normalization take away from their greatness?
No, it makes it fair, because you can't compare somebody who played 20 seasons and maybe not played that much, but accumulated more stats than somebody who was great and only played maybe 7 seasons or 8 seasons.
But so I know that the players that we were ranking, we had a 10-year minimum. Do you know, and you probably don't, does everyone on ESPN's ranking have a 10-year minimum?
Yes, they all do. Yeah, they all do. They all do. There's nobody on ESPN. I think the lowest amount of years that I've seen was maybe 11 or 12, right around there.
Okay.
But I think that the criteria that we created was for them to be considered one of the greats, right? We can use this to measure anybody, right?
Correct.
Because you're accumulating stats, you're accumulating accolades. Maybe like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's only played for like 6-7 years. Even Luka Doncic, same thing, right? But they're very efficient in the time that they play. They get a lot of stats accumulating, and that is what creates a higher baseline for many players. Now,
so let me ask you this, Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
Question. Sorry. Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what his points are, but I'm going to just throw it up there. Let's say, and you don't have to tell me, but let's say Jason Tatum's at 2,000 points right now. He's probably higher, but let's just say he's at 2,000 points. He doesn't play a game next year.
Yeah.
At all.
Yes.
Is he going to drop to like 1,900?
Yes.
He'll drop.
He drops.
Got it. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I like that.
Well,
I personally like that.
Yeah. Well, so here's the deal. Actually, here's the other thing. What I don't know is whether the stats that are measured, do they only measure when they play, or are they measured when they are part of a roster? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I don't know. Like for instance, like a Jason Tatum, he's not going to play most of the season. Let's just say he skips the entire season next year.
Correct.
Does that count against them when they create the stats, for that year? Does that happen? I don't think so. I think it measures how many years that they are in the NBA.
Correct.
Right. So that's that would count against
you're
them.
Right. So if you have 10,000 points and you've been there 10 years,
yes,
and you get hurt on year 11,
yes,
now you have 10,000 points for 11 years.
Correct.
Yeah, so I don't think that they do anything with the stats, but
I don't think so either. I think it's the amount of years that you're in the NBA.
The number of years of service, right? They continue whether you're hurt or not.
Right.
And I've always, maybe question for JJ, my three keys to being a superstar, right, is availability, right?
Right.
Desire and skill, right? You have to possess those three things. And yes, maybe some people will say, well, you're penalizing someone for getting hurt. Well, we're not penalizing them, but in order to be great, you have to be available.
Right.
And if you're not available, you can't be great, no matter how, Bo Jackson was probably one of the greatest running backs I've ever seen physically on a field, but he's not considered the greatest because he was not available for a long period of time.
Correct.
And unfortunately that counts, fair or not, that counts.
Right. And this is translatable to other sports. We just haven't come up with the criteria.
Yeah, we just have to come up with the criteria.
We can do it.
Yeah.
But we're putting out the idea that there needs to be a more objective way to establish the all-time greats, right?
Yep.
And not just, I think this guy's good. I saw him play and he has this many championships. Okay. Yeah, but like, was he as effective as somebody else, right? That played in the 50s or 60s, right?
Yep.
That Mount Rushmore kind of revealed some of that, right?
Yeah.
That we did last week. So anyway, this is the end of this segment right here. But I wanted to kind of outline. We're going to cover next week the next 10 players. The following week we're going to cover the next 10 players after that, all the way until we get to the top 10. Right now, the playoffs. Depending on how our conversation. I mean, next week when we have our show with JJ. It's all going to be about JJ, right? We're gonna have a bar conversation with JJ. We're going to talk to him about some of the stuff. We may put some of these stats up there so we can see, but we're not going to reveal the other ones because we want our audience to see everything at the same time, right? So we're not going to just do. So anyway, but we're going to have a conversation with JJ next week, and we're going to talk about everything, right? His life, his basketball life, his football life. Some of the great memories he had. Some of the guys he didn't like, some of the guys he didn't like. Anything that we want to ask, right? Yep. So that's what we're and Twan, hopefully you can come up with some questions. Right?
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Okay, cool, man. Perfect, man. So, all right, man. So anyway, so this is it for our show for this week. We went ahead and covered all of the playoff series that led up to the conference finals that are going on right now. We're down to the Final Four between the Thunder, the Wolves, and then in the East we have the Pacers and the Knicks, right? Both series are off to a great start. Right now the Thunder up 2-0. We have the Pacers up 1-0 over the Knicks and now have home court advantage. It could be their year. I think the two deepest teams in the NBA being the Thunder and the Pacers, I think they're the ones that are going to outlast. I think we're going to see that championship in the next week and a half. So, but we're going to continue talking about the playoffs in our next show. The show after next week is going to be all about JJ. We talked about this week also the PGI Index. We wanted to compare the top 75 NBA all-time list that they had, and ESPN had ranked it, and we went ahead and showed the bottom 15 of that list. So from 61 to 76, we showed how our system correlates to the way ESPN subjectively placed their rankings, and you can see that there's a lot of deltas.
There is a lot
highlighted. So that begs the question: how did ESPN come up with their system of ranking these players? Right?
Yep.
We're telling you how we did it, and
Yep.
the numbers don't lie. There's no bias to numbers.
Correct.
We just plugged in the system, and
Correct.
This is going to be evolving. Right? Some people are going to say, "You guys are smoking it, man. You guys shouldn't be putting that many points on this or this little points on this."
Sure.
Tell us, man.
Tell us.
Put comments on it that we're crazy if you want, and we'll go ahead and plug it in, and we'll, that's what we're inviting for you guys to tell us. Hey, look, you guys should actually put this many points because give us your rationale.
Give us your reason,
and dude, we'll have a segment all on that.
We could, yeah.
We got from our audience, and this is what we should. This is what it looks like, right? No problem. We can twist the knobs any which way anybody wants, right? This is the beauty of this system.
Yep. Just remember, the knob you twist doesn't just help the player you want to help. It helps everybody else.
It's going to affect everybody, right? Yep. And Twan came up with an interesting idea, which we haven't talked about yet, but he came up with an idea prior to this podcast. It's like, hey, maybe we should probably, since the MVP has 150 points, maybe we go ahead and say, whoever gets whoever was a unanimous vote, whoever got unanimously of MVP, they get the 150 points, right? But then, somebody who came in second, for instance, and in first, maybe we would distribute that 150 points to first and second or third, right? Depending on how many points based on that. I haven't figured out a system on that, but that's a very interesting idea. I'll have to think about how we can do that.
And my thought process on that, and I'll use this here, and I don't want to take anything away from SGA, but, Eddie mentioned it at the beginning, they have they're tired of voting for Joker.
Yeah.
Right. So that their vote for someone new. Well, to me, that's not good enough. Like, if the player deserves it, the player should get it. I easily think about, I think it was the year, I think Karl Malone won the MVP, and Jordan was so much better than him that year. It wasn't even funny. And like, when I look at that and I'm like, well, now we're counting it, and like that seems like we're trying to create something that's objective, but some of the data we're pulling in is subjective because it's a popularity contest.
Right.
So my thought process is, well, if like this year, if SGA only won by 10% over Joker, then we got to give that 10% to Joker somehow. We got to weigh that over to him because he made an. There's no that. Now this is going to be harder to do. Eddie's the brains and the operation, and
I'll figure it out, man. I'll figure out a system that makes sense. We might have to revise our current system in order to accommodate something like that. I'll have to crunch numbers and figure it out. It's going to take me some time. May not have it ready until maybe the week after JJ or 2 weeks after JJ.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's a rush. Yes. I think the way we're doing it right now is fair because it is subjective, but we make it objective because it's subjective equally for everybody. Right. And so everybody's kind of takes wins and losses here. Like should Jordan have won 7 or 8 MVPs? Should LeBron have won 5 or 6 MVPs? If we give them the MVPs they deserve, maybe the difference is still the same. And so therefore they have more points, but the difference in points are equal. Right. So I think overall it squares away in the wash, but it was just kind of in the back of my mind going, that is it's a popularity contest for lack of a better word, and so I'm like, we're how can we take the popularity out of it or at least try to level it a little?
Right. Yeah. How do you take the subjectivity out of it?
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Right. The subjectivity out of it. Exactly.
Well, anyway, audience, we went ahead and covered what we covered. I'm Eddie Aparicio. This is my co-host, Anthony Twan Corral. We are also called the Cisco Kids, and we are brought to you by grumblingsmedia.com. You can find us at grumblingsmedia.com as well as any other popular podcast outlet you can think of, such as YouTube, Spotify, Google, Pandora, X, Facebook, you name it. You can find us. Just type in Grumblings Media. Also find us through buzzer beaters, but it's easier with Grumblings Media. We're actually going to have our 50th episode next week. We're going to be here live with JJ Stokes. Please tune in, ask questions about his playing career, about his basketball career, about his career at UCLA, about his pro career, about what he sees as, that's doing, what are some of the changes you'd like to see in the NFL, whatever, right? Whatever you want to ask him about. The whole episode is going to be dedicated to JJ Stokes and, the life, the person, the athlete that is JJ Stokes. So anyway, without further ado, This is Eddie Aparicio. This is Anthony Twan Corral. We're going to sign off for the week and have a good rest of the week.
Hey everybody, this is Big John from Grumblings Media, and I just want to say thank you for watching our content. If you want to support our efforts here at Grumblings Media, just smash the subscribe button right here, totally free, or just go ahead and consume more of our great content. Click either one of these two boxes.